recording. Reminder, today's junior registration and tomorrow's the last day to withdraw. So if you need to withdraw from any course, pay attention. And I think there's a form on the web these days. All right. We have a test coming up next week, two-parter, covers labs 8 through 15 inclusive, and those things are due by sort of just shy of midnight on the second day to be eligible for full credit. But the labs can be used on the tests, so it's better to do them before. And if you have any questions, then you better ask them. Don't count on you turning in a lab and me getting it back to you on time. So if you have questions, you have to be proactive and ask them. All right. The new topic for today is sort of, we've been doing the same kind of activity sort of over and over again, and we're going to sort of change that today and also do a little sort of dialogue. But I'll stop, as I always try to, and ask if there are any questions. And I get nothing. Okay. So the first example is a dialogue. And it's just sort of like if we were in JavaScript, it would be an alert. It's just sort of like a little thing that pops up. So we've had toasts all along. We've sort of had this thing that sort of appeared on the screen for a while and then disappeared. But this is more things. This is more modal. It sort of pops up. It's a little bit more in the user space and sort of has to be closed. So and both of these topics today are things that Android is like forever changing. So it seems like, oh, sort of an alert, that's an easy thing, except they change it and they change it and they change it. So it's not a trivial thing. And the same thing for the other type of activity. It's one of those things they're forever futzing with and changing. So they make what seems to be easy hard by forever changing it. But that's why you'll make money when you get out of here, because you like to learn new things. And this field's always changing. So the first one, well, I'm on my laptop, but so I will just go to this. So it's Material Alert Dialog. So I don't think I called it that. I called it something silly. So recent, open recent, I called it flirty for some reason. Flirt rhymes with alert or something. Okay, so it's terribly exciting. I hit a button and an alert pops up. That's from later, that comes later. The straight line depreciation thing is later. Waiting for the new one. All right, so I have a button that says open the dialog, and I also have some text view that says hello world. And then I click and up pops this dialog with, of course, Sonnet 18 from Shakespeare. That's what all alerts should say. And then I have two things here, and I can say whatever or okay. So I'll say whatever. And then I switch this to neutral. And if I hit okay, I say okay. So I know what I press and can respond accordingly. So I open up a dialog. It's different from a toast in that it is that the user needs to interact with it, and I will know what the user did. And these things can be dressed up much more, and you can give almost like a multiple choice quiz this way with things popping up and they have to make choices. We're trying to keep it fairly simple. Okay. So the activity main is a button and a text view, so not much to it. All right. The main activity, connect to the text view, connect to the interface text view and button click. I have an input stream because I decided to put Sonnet 18 so I had to make a raw folder, and then I put Sonnet 18 in the raw folder. And just to review, I wanted a lot of text and I didn't feel like writing anything. So I just borrowed from Shakespeare. Okay, so that's what the input stream is, reading the raw file, sort of setting up the input stream and then reading it. And I'm reading it all and putting it into Sonnet text. Okay. Then I'm creating a dialog. This is, again, one of those things like the media player, like the timer, like the volley request, set it all up and then use it. And so it's so easy at the end to forget the show, but if you don't have a show, it doesn't show. Okay, so here I am setting up a dialog. I'm using the MaterialAlertDialogBuilder, which had a context of this. And we know what a pain sometimes context can be, but this is a fairly simple activity. So this worked, but we know that we can say things like, get the context or application context or base context, or keep, when context doesn't work, we keep putzing around until we get something that works. Okay, so I have a title. So the title was hello, so that was up here. And then I have a message, which is more like the body. And I use the Sonnet text for that. And then I have a neutral and a positive response. I didn't have any negative responses, but there is one, and then there are other options to make other choices. So you can just just explore what they are. You can just sort of say dot set, and things pop up. So I had a positive button and a neutral button, but there's multiple choice, and there was negative, which I didn't go for, but I did the neutral, I did the positive. There's multiple choices, all sorts of stuff that you can do in these dialogues. I'm keeping it simple. Okay, so here is, so we saw what the title was, we saw what the message was, then we have a neutral button. I can make the neutral button say whatever I want, so I made it say whatever. And then there's a listener for the clicking of that button. So I'm making a neutral button, and then I'm making the handler of that button. So this is if you click that button, and all I'm doing if you click that button is changing the text of the TV result. But I could do more there, but I'm not. I'm just keeping it simple. And I have a positive button, and I can set its text to say okay, And then I can, again, figure out what I want to do if they click OK. And then don't forget to show the dialog or nothing happens. So that's a dialog. They're convenient. You can just pop something, better than a toast, especially if you want it to sit there for a while. So, if you want something that's going to hang out for longer than even a long toast, and also if you want to sort of force the user to interact, to say like, okay, I read that thing. So that is a material alert dialog builder. Okay. And they have other things and they deprecated them. So when they're changing the language and Android is still changing fairly rapidly, then if they're getting rid of something that they don't want you to use. So there will be a while where it will work, but they don't want you to use it. And then they'll say it's deprecated. And so then it pops up on the screen, not with a red underline, not to say that doesn't work anymore, but with like a gray stripe through. And that will mean, so the previous version of the dialog that I knew and loved got deprecated, and now this is what I use. Okay. Until next time around, and they've changed it again. But okay. So there we go. So expect on that third test, I'll say, make a dialog that has blah, Okay. So that was that. And now what came next was, I don't need that, I don't need that. I'm going to show you a different style of activity, a bottom navigation activity. And then I'm going to look at a specific one, and then your job is for you to write one, or you to add to mine, more to the point. Okay. Slideshow from the beginning. Oh, it likes to do this. All right, I'll live with that. So the bottom navigation activity is just, we've been mostly picking empty activity, and now we're just making this different choice, this bottom navigation activity. And it gives you a lot more stuff. It is, so there is, this thing has like 3, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call them tabs, or 3 icons down here along the bottom. And each one of them attaches to what they call a fragment. So there is, over here in layout, there are 4 XMLs in the layout. There are 3 fragments and another one to sort of be like the controlling one. Oops. So there are now a bunch of XMLs down here. There is a navigation XML, a menu XML, more drawable things come in. They give you some icons down here that are what the person clicks on to move from one of these fragments to another. And then there is over here in code, in addition to a main activity, there's a tab for each of the screens and there are 2 Kotlin files in each of those. So lots of stuff. Okay, so we're going to keep it easy and just sort of edit the stuff they give. So I'm just going to take the sort of middle icon and have it, have it do what I want it to do. And then you're going to take one of the other ones and make it do what I want it to do. Okay. So again, here are the 3, and there are these sort of, when you have an activity that does sort of multiple things and shows you multiple screens, then they call that fragments. And you can also have fragments that are parts of screens. So this could be just sort of somehow like 3 separate activities and and you could move from one activity to another. But a fragment can be sort of an activity, sort of almost a full screen, or it can be just part of a screen. Okay, so there are these 3, and I'm going to play with the middle one. So I'm going to show you sort of where in this big complication of things is this code. So there'll be, in the drawable, there'll be an icon. I'm going to work with this middle one. So I'm going to work with what they were calling the dashboard. And there's a dashboard icon. And there's a menu, and there's an item. So that's on the next slide. So why don't I just move to the next slide? So here's where the menu, bottom navigation menu, XML. Again, this thing is, at this point, everything is just given to you. You just say, I want this bottom navigation activity. And so far, everything I'm showing you is just given. And then we'll add to what was given. So here's this bottom navigation menu, and there were 3 items, and they have IDs and icons and titles, and the icons are in draw. So I was too lazy and too rushed, too rushed than too lazy, to change the icons. But if you change, if you put in something new in the drawable, if you find an icon you like, you put it here in drawable and give it a name with the correct naming scheme, and then you can switch the icon. I did not switch the icon, but I will be switching the title because that's easy. Okay, but here is the control of the menu. There's bottom nav menu, XML, and there were 3 items, and they have IDs, they have icons, and they have titles. I changed the title of the middle icon, and then you can see when I run it now, I didn't change the icon, but I changed the title, and that's the word. So what came up was an icon and a word under it, and I changed the word under it. So that's what the title is. In case you couldn't, just, again, it's just a sort of a big mess of things. So when you first look at it, it's a little confounding, but that's sort of straightforward. Change the title. Okay. Now what I want to do is start editing the layout, the specific layout of this thing. So what they had was, what they gave me for free was one text view. They gave me a fragment underscore dashboard. I didn't go changing its name. I'm just going to stick with that name. When you guys do it, it makes me mad, and now I'm doing it to you. So I should be making you mad. So I just took this fragment underscore dashboard, and it gave me one text view that was in the middle, and that they controlled and said, like, hi, I'm the dashboard. And I didn't want that. So I changed its constraints and I moved it up to the top and I gave it an ID and I gave it some text. They weren't really controlling it here in design. They were controlling it in code. And I don't want to take that away. I want you to be able to control it either way. So I'm also going to put, it says straight line depreciation, and then in code, I'm going to add exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. So I'm going to show you where it is in design and where it is in code so that you can do it either way. So this is me working in design. So I moved this, changed the constraint so it was up to the top. So I got rid of the bottom constraint, which was centering it. I gave it an ID, I gave it a title. And then here I am over in the fragment. So up here in the code section, there's the main activity. And then under UI, there were three folders. And then in the folders, there were two things, and I'm in the fragment. And here's a big mess of stuff. But here's where they're playing around with the title. This is where they added their title. So their title was not in design, but in code. And I did not want to do all code. I wanted you to be able to do design, but I also wanted you to be able to do code. So I took my code, I took my design and I added to it in code. So here's this me connecting to the interface. Now you use this word binding. And there was my ID. I changed the ID. They had a different ID. Okay, so that is an SL. My example is going to be straight line depreciation. So when you see SL, that refers to straight line. Okay, so it's the text view for the straight line and it's the title of the fragment. And so here's me connecting to the interface. So we used to always have find view by ID. And now in this world, it's binding dot. So I say what type of a thing it is. It's text view. If it's a new sort of widget in code, you're going to have to do Alt Enter, all that stuff you know from the beginning of the course. But instead of find view by ID, we're using this binding. So we're binding this code text view to the TVSL type. Okay. And then in this little method, I took the text view that I had the text that I already had, and I'm adding 3 exclamation points to it and making it the new text. So that was me just sort of saying, here's where you work with it in code. And so if I wanted it just to be pure design, then I just wouldn't have this. I wouldn't need this. Would be commented out. It would do nothing. So there's my comment out up here. That's their old code. This is me, my new code. And so I can put in the title in code, or I can put the title in design, and I've sort of done a mix of both so that you see the worst of both worlds. Okay. Now I'm going back and going beyond just the title and editing my fragment, and I'm making it this interface for figuring out depreciation, which is an accounting thing. A fairly simple calculation. You say, here's the value of something at the beginning. Here's the value of something that I think it's going to be at the end, like, a car, even when you're done with the car, there's like some scrap metal, there's still some value in the car. That's the salvage value. And then the lifetime, how many years you expect to have whatever this item is. And then there's a calculation to say how much the value goes down each year. And straight line is a very simple calculation. It just goes down the same amount every year. So you take the initial value, you subtract the salvage value, and you divide by the number of years, and that's how much you go down every year. So of course I give you, since I did the easy one, you have to do a slightly harder depreciation. So your job will be harder than mine. But so I set up the interface for that. And that's just pretty much normal. It's a constraint layout. So, drag things over and constrain them and give them IDs and yada, yada. Try to make sure if my initial and salvage value were decimals, my lifetime was just a number to try to pick the right widget. Okay, so there was text view, edit text, text view, edit text, text view, edit text, button, text view. Okay. Now I'm over back in Kotlin and in the fragment, and I'm connecting to the interface. This is one of the things that changed. It used to be find view by ID, now it's bind. Once you have one, then it's easy enough for you to write all the others. And they give you one, so you just sort of copy the style and make all the others. And again, if this is the first time you've had an edit text, you're going to have to do Alt, Enter, and import. Okay, so these are my ID names, ET, SL, initial value, ET for edit text, SL because I'm going to have multiple fragments, and I want to say that this is the straight line one, and then here's the initial value. Because I don't want things, ID shouldn't have two things with the same ID. So when you do some other kind of depreciation, I don't want you to say ET initial value, although you can now say initial value because I chose to have the SL. But if I said ET initial value and then you tried to go ET initial value, it would screen that two IDs have the same, two things have the same ID, which should not be allowed. So that's what all these SLs are doing in there. I didn't do it for the button because the button says straight line. So, okay, but that's the usual. The big change is the word find. Okay. The button calc set on click, and you just have to make sure where you are. There's a thing below that says return root. Make sure you're above that. And again, I'm giving you the code, so you'll see the code. But so here is the usual button calc. I called it button calc, but that's not the ID of the button. I set an on-click listener. I get the value I get the salvage, I get the lifetime. I get the text, I convert it to string, and then I convert to a double. If I were being careful, which I wasn't because I was in a hurry, I would put this in a try catch in case they forgot to enter something. I clear out any old previous schedule I might have had. I take the value minus the salvage and divide it by the life. That's how much I'm going to take it down each time. So that's the depreciation. I set up a loop that goes over the lifetime from 1 to life. And I take the value and I subtract the depreciation and make it the new value. And then I'm appending a line to my schedule that says after years, the value is, and then I'm formatting the string so that it's got a decimal place, 2 decimal places, so it looks like money. I wanted to show you a toast, so I just slap up a toast and says, thank you for choosing straight line depreciation. Because one of the arguments in the make text, a toast has a make text method, and the first argument is the context, and the context gets weird. And so there's this thing called the root that they've given you the root, so you don't have to make the root, but we want to work in the roots context. So context can get confusing, but we're going to specify that it's the root context. And then I'll always with toast, don't forget to say show. And then there is, after the user entered the values and clicked the button, there is this depreciation schedule. I wasn't fast enough to show you the toast in my screen capture. Okay. If you wanted something that hung around longer, you would use that dialog, that alert that we showed it that my other example for today. So that is that. Okay. So I give you this stuff. Say again. Oh, why did it do that? Ah. All right. I keep doing the wrong thing. I have to go here and then download it. So there's lots of structure here. So I just decided to zip up the main to sort of keep the structure so you can see the structure. So there's the manifest. There's the res. Here are those icons. So if you don't like the icons and you want to switch them, put some icons here. Here's the layout. There are now 4 things in the layout, these 3 fragments and then the main. So there's activity main, like there's always been, and then the fragments. But I didn't work in activity main because that's the sort of controlling the menu kind of a thing. I worked in the dashboard fragment. You'll pick one of the other ones. You'll pick either home or notifications. Okay. What else? The menu I didn't touch. There's a menu, but I don't think I touched it. Or is that where I put the title? No, that I did touch that. That's where I put the title. So I didn't touch the drawables because I was lazy, but you could. In the layout, I worked with the dashboard. You'll work with one of the other ones. In the menu, I changed the title. If I change the icons, I may have to change the icon as well. And I didn't touch the navigation. No, I didn't touch that. I didn't touch values. I didn't teach values night. I didn't touch any of these bitmap things. So I was layout and menu. That's where I was. That's where I did things here. And then in the code, I didn't touch the main activity. If I were to add like a 4th thing or something, I may have to do more work, but I just they had 3 things. I kept them. I changed 1. So I was keeping it easy. And I worked, as I say, I was working on the dashboard. I didn't touch the view model. I worked within the fragment. And down here, there is this override on create. It used to say on create, now it says on create view, blah, blah, blah. They gave you all this. I didn't touch it. Here's where I started to touch things. After the binding root, I touched, this is where I did stuff. They gave me, I edited this. They gave me this, but I edited it slightly. And then return root was them. And on destroy view was them. So they gave you most of this, but the stuff that looks most familiar to you is the stuff that you have to edit. Okay. And then, so make one of these, look at the slideshow, figure out what pieces to change. If you want to copy any of my code, I've given it to you in the zip. And you just have to do for the lab, a different kind of depreciation. You have to do what's called the sum of the years digits. And so the depreciation changes every year for you. So you'll do the same. You'll get an initial value. You'll get a salvage value. You'll get a lifetime. So you're collecting the same information from the user. So if that's mostly a copy. You're going to have a loop. So that's a copy. And then you have to do a slightly, my calculation, my depreciation was above the loop because I had the same depreciation every year. You have to move the depreciation into the loop because it changes. And if L were the lifetime and I is the counter, I always count with I's because I'm very, very old. So the initial value minus the salvage value, multiply it by 2 and L plus 1 minus I, and then divide by L times L plus 1. That's the depreciation. And then you say value equals value minus depreciation. So hopefully that's not too taxing of a calculation. And I gave you in a picture that I stole from the internet, an example. And so here's some examples. So they started with their initial value was 250,000. Their salvage value was 25,000, and they're doing it for 5 years. And then they were showing you the value after every year. So that is they're showing you more information than I asked you to, but you can show all that information or you can just show the value. It's good enough. So you have at least one thing you can test your code against. So that is the lab for today. That lab is not on the, that lab is not on the test. So if you're not ready, if all the labs for the test aren't done, then focus on those. If you're caught up, then work on this. This will be on test 3. Any questions? Which is in the finals week, and the final exam schedule is posted. I think if you just say final exam schedule on the portal, it will pop up. And I think we're on Thursday, and it may be something horrible like 8 o'clock in the morning. Questions for the recording? None. Stop recording.